the way up.
Love this. Seeing that it's 7 o'clock, I'll call to order this meeting of March 9, 2015, the Board of Selectmen. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, and I just want to announce that Chelmsford Telemedia is broadcasting this meeting live and also taping it for later rebroadcast. If anybody else is video or audio taping this meeting, please let me know at this time. Okay. We have a public service announcement this evening. Lynn Gollins for the Lowell Walk for Hunger.
Good evening.
Good evening.
We have posters now. Nice. I really want to thank you for letting me come and speak again this year. I came last year, and we have been looking to develop and expand this walk. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Project Bread Walk for Hunger that started in 1969, and out here in the Merrimack Valley, the hunger and homelessness knows no bounds, and since 2008, we spoke at our recent committee meeting last week. The new director of the Lowell Transitional Living Center came to our meeting, and the amount of homeless that are showing up needing a roof over their heads has increased by 50% over the past 2 years, as well as all of the local institutions from churches to, I know that here in Chelmsford, we have the meal that's held at the Congregational Church. The amount of people that require sustenance has dramatically increased. And for people to be able to be at home, whether they're underemployed or unemployed, being able to feed their families has really become a challenge. So this walk is now in its 33rd year, and we have been looking at ways to try to rebrand it so that it would be more successful. It's one of the few things that you can do. There's so many opportunities now for people to give of their time and of their funds all over the state, never mind nationally, whether it's the Breast Cancer Walk, whether it's Lowell General's Walk for Cancer Care, the American Heart Association. There's always something to be done. But what makes this walk unique, and when it was founded by some of the people that are currently on the committee are original members from 1982. And at that time, they looked at the needs in the Merrimack Valley and came up with local charities. And there's currently 7 local charities that benefit from this one action. It's the Alternative House, which is for battered women, that is in Lowell. It's the House of Hope, that's the largest home for homeless families in the state. It's the mobile food pantry for the Merrimack Valley Food Bank that is out of Lawrence, the food pantries for Chelmsford and Westford, and the Lowell Transitional Living Center. And then one of the original founders has moved to the south, and her national group called Sharing Inc. Supplies funding for disadvantaged African American children in the south. So a person can do this walk or run, and this is what I want to give you, just the logistics. We've looked at rebranding things, and they can do one action, and essentially 100% of what people raise through their efforts goes to being divided amongst these 8 charities. We're a 21 all-volunteer group that our working budget has basically been through donations. Lowell Vocational Technical High School does the printing. The kids at the school assist with the layout of the graphics. We pay a minimal amount simply for the paper stock, and it transcends many businesses that have assisted us with that. It has always been a 13-mile walk. And what we were finding was the participation was declining. We've got people that have been involved in this since its inception that have always raised hundreds, some thousands of dollars in order to distribute. But we have been seeing a marked decline. So what we did, I also have maps over here of the actual route. It's on the brochures as well as on the website. what we ended up doing was looking at the fact that Chelmsford and Westford have been integral in this walk since the beginning, because that's where it's held. And it starts at St. Mark's Church, it goes to St. Catherine's, and back to St. Mark's, which that route is 4.2. So we're looking to make that more of a fun run and possibly a walk. From St. Catherine's to West Chelmsford Methodist Church is 8.8, and that was always the turnaround point for a whole 13 miles. And there's a lunch that's served there with multiple donations everywhere from Trader Joe's to Hannaford to multiple businesses. So we're hoping to improve the participation that way, making it into a run as well. We also have a website where it used to be just a link on the Westford Town website. So it is www.glwfh.org, as well as a Facebook page. And as you can see, we have come up with a logo that has been around, but we had 3 or 4 different logos. So this is what you would always see going forward, this color green for this logo, the first Saturday of April going forward, because it had been Good Friday, so that also made it difficult. It could be in March, and looking outside now, it would have been a little difficult thinking about having anybody walking on the streets with the snowbanks. So I wanted, I wanted to be able to take the opportunity to let the town know that there is the options to do smaller distances. This is still, as it always has been, an exceptional community service activity for any kids now with the shorter distances, and especially middle school to high school. Their community service that's required for college as well as for the National Honor Society. So I have left some posters over here like these. If you have businesses that you feel that you frequent that you would like to take, there's also some of the brochures to gather names of sponsors. Oh, and we have a PayPal button now on the website. Someone donated actual domain space, so it's its own designated website, and I'm hoping that that will make a difference. I know I've taken up quite a bit of time here, but I really do appreciate it. It's something that our town has been involved in for so long, and I'd really like to see this grow and expand to serve the Merrimack Valley the way it should. So thank you very much.
So,
yes.
So do you have to sign up ahead of time?
No, actually, thank you. The registration is actually the day of the walk at St. Mark's. There's the hard copy brochures with a PayPal button. If people want to have friends, family, co-workers donate, and you can donate all year round now with that option available on the website, they can just submit that when they get to the registration at the registration table. So we're still in the infancy of trying to figure out how to utilize the technological parts of when somebody does the Pan Mass Challenge. I just go to their webpage when they send me an email. We aren't quite there yet where each individual walker has their own designated page. But the sign up is actually at St. Mark's at 8 in the morning.
Okay, that's going to be my next
So, and there is a van that will take people. If when my kids were little, they didn't do the whole walk, but they still were sponsored by people because they were doing something that was benefiting others. And you can be picked up anywhere along the route. So.
Okay, you said St. Mark's in Westford, and
St. Mark's.
And where's that?
It's on Cold Spring.
Okay, just in case people want to know.
Yes, on the corner of Cold Spring Road and Graniteville Road in Westford. And then it goes to St. Catherine's, which is about 2.2 miles into, I think that's Forge Village. And then it turns around from St. Catherine's. So it's not a loop. It's an out and back. And then from St. Mark's, it goes down Lowell Road and then to West Chelmsford Methodist Church, which is just before Nabnasset. And then the turnaround goes back.
Okay. Thank you very much. Anybody
Thank
else
you.
have
I
questions?
appreciate it.
Okay. Thanks.
Luck.
Good luck. Yeah.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, just I received the text. Alana Melanson arrived late. She is recording portions of the meeting. She wanted
Okay,
to pass that
thank you,
on.
Elaine. Okay, we're now at the open session of our meeting. If anybody here would like to address the board about any subject, now would be the time to do that.
Hi, I'm Kathy Simmons with the Chelmsford Women of Today. And on March 22nd, we're sponsoring our 5th annual Spare the Violence Bowl-a-thon. I think you've all received personal invitations. We'd like the town to know that it's going to be held March 22nd. Registration is required, though, because we have to have the lanes. We need to know how many lanes to reserve. So the Saturday before, so the 17th, the 15th, if you could just get us your registration, or at least email us and tell us you have a team that'll show up that day. The bowl-a-thon will be held at the Brunswick Bowling Lanes, which is on Pawtucket Boulevard, right across from the Rourke Bridge. I think as soon as you go over the bridge, you can't miss it. It's held from 1 to 4. At 12:30 is registration. You need to pre-register, but at 12:30 you bring in your sponsorships and sign up for your team. We get you pizza and soda and get you all set up. It's really a fun afternoon. There's lots of prizes, and it's for a wonderful cause. I mean, we're trying to stop the cycle of violence. So all the money goes to run alternative house programming, their summer program for their children. We have other small organizations other than alternative house that do benefit from this, but for the same reason, most of it is all domestic violence. We ask that you invite 4 of your friends, colleagues, or family members and have a team of 5. Team registration is $70, which is $14 per person. So that's for your lane and your shoes. That all goes to the bowling lanes. We don't get any of the registration money. What we do ask you to do is get sponsorships. $50 per person in the team, or $250 as a team as an aggregate. Of course, the more, we'll take it, because that's the only money that we actually get to donate to these causes. So it's 3 games of bowling for your 5 bowlers for the $14. You get a pitcher of soda and a pizza. And then during the day, there are raffles, prizes, door prizes. There's prizes for the team that brings in the most sponsorship. There's prizes for the team that bowls the best. There's prizes for the person that bowls the highest score. There's prizes for the person that brings in the most sponsorships. Prizes all day long. So we really try to make it a fun day. And I think everybody that's bowled before has always had a good time. Registration forms are available on our website, which is cwotma.org. Or you can call me at 978-256-8592. Not today, though. We didn't have power all day. I think they're just about finished fixing that up on 27. So anyway, it's on March 22nd at the bowling lanes. And I do have a registration form in case anybody's interested in signing up. Hope to see you there. Do you have a team?
Thank you.
I think so. We usually have one.
You want to do it again this year?
Yeah. I'm in. George.
There you go.
Be there.
Matt. I did promote the bowl-a-thon on the radio on Saturday to try and help get a little bit more
Awesome.
PR for it. Hopefully that
They
helps.
also met with Joe Reddy and did the Dennis Reddy,
Oh,
the
good.
Town Talk too. which
Town
was
Talk.
kinda good. So hopefully we'll get a team from that too. We actually did get 2 calls this week, which is nice. So the more teams we get, the better it is. The more fun it is, the more prizes we get.
Yeah.
So we hope to see everybody. Just send us your registration form.
When's the registration deadline?
The Saturday before.
Okay.
So it's the 15th. We have actually until that Monday,
Okay.
when we have to call the lanes and let them know exactly how many lanes. We'd love to get 15 lanes this year, so hopefully everybody will do it. So we'll look forward to seeing your registration.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else for open session? Okay, we'll move on to committee vacancies then.
Committee vacancies as of March 9th, 2015. There is 1 vacancy on the 101 Mill Road Committee, 1 vacancy on the Community Preservation Committee, 2 vacancies on the Cultural Council, 1 vacancy on the Energy Conservation Committee, 1 vacancy on the Great Brook Farm Advisory Committee, 1 vacancy on the Historical Commission, 1 vacancy on the Land Management Subcommittee, 1 vacancy on the Personnel Board, and 1 vacancy on the Tree Committee. If you're interested in serving on a town board or committee, please fill out the committee application. It's available on the town website, www.townofchelmsford.us.
Okay, and Paul, I know we have in our packet the intention to resign from one of the members of the zoning board of appeals. Has that been
I haven't
official?
received the official notice.
Okay.
I noticed
All
it,
right,
but-
we'll hold off on that. But I did also want to mention that at our next meeting on March 23rd, we will be appointing a member to the Neshoba Valley Technical High School Committee. So if anybody's interested in applying for that position, they can do that the same way you would apply for any other committee or board in town, so.
What's the deadline for that? Just right before the
It
meeting?
would be probably the Wednesday before, so it can be included in our packet, so whatever that date would be,
Maria
around the
Carabellis.
around the 18th.
Do you know one of the members of the civic committee did call all the members who had applied for either the 7 North Road Committee or the 101 Mill Road Committee to see if they might be interested in serving on some of these committees. So hopefully we may be able to get 1 or 2 more members out of that because we had a lot of extra applicants. So.
Okay,
Yeah,
very
just
good.
FYI.
All right. Okay, next thing up is a license for Dunkin' Donuts. Is the applicant here? Okay. And please identify yourself.
I'm Brittany Briggs. I work for 80 Conway Dunkin' Donuts. I'm here in place of Bob 80.
Okay. And this is a new Dunkin' Donuts. You want to tell us about it?
It's a new Dunkin' Donuts. We are putting on the opposite side of the other Dunkin' Donuts we own on 7 Acton Road. This will be on Boston Road. It will convenience drivers on both sides because of, the way it's set up. So we think it will help. We're not closing the other Dunkin' Donuts. We plan on keeping both of them open and just conveniencing people a little better.
At the Stop and Shop,
Right,
former Stop and
yeah.
Shop Marshall's Plaza to people at home maybe wondering
Okay.
where exactly it's going to be
Yeah.
located.
In the application, and I don't know if you've seen the actual paperwork that we have, but there's some discrepancy as a number of actual seats.
Yes, it was 35. I did end up sending her, emailing her a number.
35. We don't see that number at all. We see 24 and 22.
Yes,
And then
we-
there's something that says 99. Now, 99 is what, capacity with people standing, or?
I'm not sure what that was, but we did, I did email, I think it was Sharon back, and said 35 seats. We would be open 5 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Okay. Yeah, typically we get like a floor plan that shows what the layout is, so,
I did submit a floor plan. I'm
Okay.
not sure.
I didn't get it in my packet.
Okay, I can bring that as soon as you guys need it. That's no problem. Sorry about that.
Does it
Okay.
need to be contingent?
When were you planning on opening?
It would probably, we actually had to move back a week, so it'll probably be early April.
Okay, so if you had to come back to March 23rd, that wouldn't inconvenience you a
No.
great deal if because just so we can get the, finalize these numbers and have a floor plan, just so everything is in order.
Sure, no problem.
If that's okay. Okay, anybody else have any questions before we continue this? And it's really not a public hearing, so so we don't, so if you just want to come back on,
Excuse me, somebody must have seen it with them being signed off by all the departments, the fire
Right.
department.
but still, I'd like to see it, we generally do have that floor plan, and we generally do have,
It's a little significant going from 22 to 24 to 35.
right, yeah.
If it was just a couple more seats, it'd be different.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, anything else? Okay, thanks.
Well,
Did you have something?
I was just going to say we might want to make sure that the building department has seen a plan with 35 seats and that they didn't see a plan with 22 seats, approve this, and
Yeah,
then get a
that's-
plan after. So
Exactly,
maybe,
yeah.
could you just check in on that, Paul?
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, now we'll go to a continuation of a public hearing. I see a couple utility guys here. I see. So you guys can come up and tell us about this Apollo Drive.
Good evening,
Conduit
Philip
petition.
Corsi, engineer, National Grid, Waltham. We are petitioning to place conduit in Apollo Drive out to Billrica Road. This is part of our large substation upgrade at the Meadowbrook substation in Chelmsford, and this will allow us to bring a brand-new feeder down to this area of Chelmsford.
So this is going to result in less power outages when we have an accident on Route 27, like we did this morning. No comment, huh?
Yeah, this will bring, brand-new facilities to Billrica Road, and it'll tie into the existing pole line that's on Billrica Road.
Okay, when we first had this before us, there was some concern from one of the neighbors on Monmouth Road. Have you met with him and
Yes,
resolved the issues that you had with him?
yes, we have private property easements that will bring us to Apollo Drive.
Okay. Okay, does anybody else have any questions for the applicant?
Well, I have a question. So it doesn't look as though really anything's changed from when we, let me see, hold on.
I know we
When
still,
the engineer had originally said we cannot recommend approval. I see that they're now recommending approval, our senior civil engineer, you know, pending these following conditions are met.
Yeah, the addition was really seeing the easement to the private property that led to Apollo Drive. And we've demonstrated that we've obtained those easements by providing copies that you can see here.
Okay. Well, I see that it's contingent upon, all existing utility locations must be verified prior to excavation.
Yes,
Okay,
yeah, that's part of our
Right.
construction routine,
okay.
to mark, lay out, dig safe.
Okay, now who are you gonna provide that proof to? Back to our civil engineer?
Yes.
Okay. And what
Yeah,
about,
we agree to all those conditions as part of obtaining the road opening permit as well.
okay,
So this is for the granting of the rights to put the conduit in.
Right.
Once our contractor is selected, then we'll go with a contractor to the town to obtain the road opening permit,
okay. I would just,
which is normal in the course of,
right. And then you said you got approval by the property owner or owners?
yes, we have easements written, signed, deeded
Okay,
to get from Monmouth Street to Apollo Drive.
okay.
This
would
is
just
a
like to-
this is a copy of the exhibit that's attached with that easement. Doesn't have all the legal easement language, but it's a demonstration that
Okay,
we've performed that.
I mean, even our permission doesn't give them permission to go on private property without.
okay.
a
I
property
just wanna
owner's
make sure
permission.
all of this is fulfilled,
Mhm.
you know, if we grant this.
And
And that
as-
proof is in the file.
You want to just reference this letter, these conditions in the motion? Is that-
Do you have any other questions? This is a public hearing. Does anybody else have any comments about this petition? Okay. Entertain a motion to close the public hearing then.
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. We have a motion then to,
Make a motion to approve the petition for the electric conduit on Apollo Drive for National Grid, as presented with the following approvals, the following conditions must be met, as outlined in the letter dated February 24, 2015, by Christina Papadopoulos, our senior civil engineer.
Second?
okay, any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much. Okay, first report this evening is Eric Merrill about kennel fees.
Good evening.
Evening.
Before you tonight, I've been speaking with Honorina Maloney and through Paul Cohen to update our kennel fees that we charge right now. They have not been updated or improved in over a decade, and we're far below comparative to other towns. So we're looking to increase the kennel fees. It's a multifaceted aspect. It's to cover costs of all the materials, food, cleaning supplies, and stuff that we use for the kennels. Also, a deterrence that the dog is not left there. Because we have had people say, geez, you're cheaper than the kennel, and left them there for extended periods of time. In comparison, neighboring towns are charging between $25 and $32 a day. Currently, we are at 15. So I'd like to propose that we raise our kennel fees to 30 and adjust it from there.
Okay, any questions for Eric? I mean, it seems like a pretty steep increase, you know, doubling the fee. I understand why, as you said, it hasn't been increased in 10 years, but I don't know if anybody else has a concern that that's such a significant increase.
What's the average length of time that the dog?
The average would be 2 to 3 days. You know, we have some, state laws on strays mandate we have to keep it 7 days. So even our own dog, if it's left there over 7 days, it becomes property of the town of Chelmsford. So the max it's going to be there, barring a state quarantine for an ill dog, would be 7 days. On the average, most of our residents are looking for their dogs, and they do want them back, so it's a one-day deal. But then we have, you know, some neglectfully, I forgot the dog, or we didn't know he got him out, and he's there 2 or 3 days. So,
You'd mentioned 25. Is 25 the more common number, or do they range
Well,
up to
no,
30, or
um,
35, 20?
Tingsborough's 30, Lowell's 32, Drakett's 32, Westford's 25. So, there's only one at 25 right now,
The rest are at 30.
or 32.
Yeah,
So.
30. Why not 32, Eric?
Well,
I'm just
not?
messing.
I don't want to go to the top of the spectrum yet.
All right.
Well, Pat, what were you thinking?
I don't know, I mean, I just wanted to bring that up, that it is, you know, it's 15 now, it is, you know, doubling. When was, do you know, was it exactly 10 years ago that it was last increased?
It's
You don't
probably
remember?
right around 10 years. I want to say we look, 2005, I think it was increased. At that point, I think it was from $5, that was dating back into the early 80s.
So that went from 5 to 15?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, well, see, there's a good argument
Now
then.
he's only doubling it.
Now
so-
he's
Anyone at 45?
So it's, you know, we're just looking to, you know, kind of get us back into what's equal with other comparative towns and to cover costs, because as you know, our budget goes up every year. The cost of materials and liability and stuff goes up. The longer a dog is there, the more chances are, you know, it's going to be there.
What's the typical revenue per year that you get from these fees? Do you have any idea?
Last year, 700 plus.
Okay,
This year, right now, we're running around 400. So, it's not big money.
mhm.
It's,
So it's typically only 1 or 2 days that you would
Yeah.
have somebody be paying this?
and strays, of course, if we hold them for the 7 days, there's no owner, so we never get any reimbursement on those dogs.
So when somebody adopts, they don't have to pay those fees?
We typically don't adopt a lot out. Most of them are transferred over to the Humane Society due to liability reasons. State law mandates they should be spayed, neutered, and everything. And to go through the hoops of us paying for that and then to adopt out a dog, it's not fiscally feasible.
Sure.
So we usually just transfer it to the Humane Society and they do the adoptions.
Okay,
So we don't really get a return on our stray dogs.
okay.
So you feeding them?
Yeah, we're feeding them, cleaning them, you know, housing them for the
Run
week.
them there or
What?
whatever? You have a little run for them, like?
Yeah, we have a kennel area outside, we have indoor, you know, they're all indoor. Dates back to many years ago where they weren't allowed to have outdoor, but we do have a pen that when we're cleaning the kennels and stuff, they can go out and, you know, get some exercise. We'll take them for a walk and stuff.
And you said which town did you say was at $25?
Westford.
Okay.
I mean,
Yeah, I know it's only $5, but to be honest with you, I'd rather just start at 25, and maybe in a couple of years we come back and we raise it to 30. There's just something about doubling it just
Sure.
right away that I'm not particularly comfortable with.
I feel more comfortable with 25.
can we have a motion then?
Motion.
I'll make a motion that we increase our kennel fee from $15 per day to $25 per day, effective immediately.
Do we have a
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Awesome, thank you very much. Have a great evening.
Thanks. And that was good timing. Next on our agenda is Chairman of the School Committee, Mike Rigney. Mike, are you ready, or shall we take
Take a breath. Get you a glass of water if you want first. You just.
I work well to deadlines. Okay. First of all, Madam Chair and other members of the board, thank you for having me here tonight.
I'm looking for the presentation. It's out of, unless she moved it.
If it doesn't go up, Donna Newcomb's going to kill me. She's been lecturing me on how you can't just read things off a piece of paper.
Anything else you want to talk about while we're while we're waiting?
Nope.
Come on.
Well, I do appreciate you coming tonight and doing this. I think it's
I think this is you know what, this is a great opportunity. This is the sort of cooperation that I think that all three of the major boards are going to need to have going forward if we're gonna do a good job with the school budget, just like the rest of the budget.
Well, while
So-
Paul's doing that, if you want to give us a timeline on presentation of the school committee budget, I think, we had.
Well, okay, yeah, that's probably a good thing to talk about. We are waiting, along with the rest of the town, for the town manager's guidance, which will be based on the numbers that were just recently promulgated by the governor. So we'll learn along with the finance committee on Thursday what's being recommended. We are not going to have a meeting this Tuesday. We will have a meeting next Tuesday on the 17th. I'd expect to see the information that's presented at FinCom on Thursday be incorporated in kind of a final preliminary school budget on the 17th. I do not foresee us taking a vote at that time. I think we'll wait at least until the 24th, but we are going to need to give the administration some guidance they present to the Finance Committee on the 26th. So between the 17th and the 24th, we'd be interested in hearing from people what they see in the budget. If they have comments that they want to make, we'll also have a public budget hearing sometime after the election on the 7th. So most likely either the 14th or the 21st. We have to do it before we go into town meeting.
Okay. And if you want to begin your.
Yeah, so,
I think because it was
What-
submitted today,
It just-
she didn't update it into the
all
file.
right, well, so with apologies to Donna. Yes, I'm here to provide an update on the implementation of the recommendations from the town of Chelmsford agreed upon procedures report of the Chelmsford Public Schools provided by Melanson Heath, sometimes more colloquially referred to as the Sullivan Report. If you go through the report, I have simply broken out the recommendations in various categories. I assume you all have the text of the report, which I believe is also available online. The first recommendation has to do with liquidated purchase orders, unpaid bills, and fiscal 2014 bills paid out of the fiscal 2015 appropriation. It's pages 7 to 10 in the report. The recommendation is the town has had a special town meeting and submitted a budget proposal to cover the fiscal 2014 bills paid in 2015, the unpaid fiscal 2014 bills, and to cover the projected deficit in 2015. So the update, the action taken with regard to that is merely to note that the actions at the special town meeting and the extended fall town meeting were in fact sufficient to cover the unpaid bills and the projected FY15 shortfalls, and we're grateful to town meeting for taking that approach. The next section discusses the 4-year trend analysis that Mr. Sullivan did. And the recommendation is that the trend analysis presented as part of this report should be used as a foundation for development of future budgets. Restructuring the budget into responsibility centers and holding those responsible for their budgets will help control deficits. The business office should continue preparing a detailed financial report with a projection column so that any potential unexpected deficits can be dealt with before the end of the year. There have been several actions taken there. The work was essentially assigned to the administration rather than to the school committee, but I can report on what's been done. Specific responses include revised formats of the monthly budget updates. They are quite a bit more extensive than they have been in the past. They're also direct munis dumps in some cases, as opposed to the Excel spreadsheets that we had received in the past. They also do include a column of projected expenses for the remainder of the fiscal year so that we can see how we're adjusting ourselves to the target as the year goes on. It makes it easier to see any unexpected deviations and to deal with them in a timely manner. You can also, the responsibility centers are reflected in a couple of things. I believe you have a copy of the FY16 budget, which is broken out not only by individual lines but also by responsibility centers. Also, if you look at the monthly updates, there have been a number of lines added that were not in the original Melanson Heath report. These are, in fact, additional cost centers that were identified during the creation of the responsibility centers. So we're seeing an immediate impact already there. And a note for this recommendation, it will be in many of the recommendations that there is an ongoing responsibility for the school committee to maintain this level of accountability. I think one of the most important things we can say is that none of this is going to be done. It's always going to be a work in progress. We are always going to have to continue to make sure that we're doing what we need to get done.
Mike, just a quick question.
Sure.
So does that mean it's a new policy, or has it been incorporated into the?
No. I think you'll see it in the behavior at the meetings themselves. As long as we continue to receive these reports, it's still our responsibility to go through them, to ask questions. If we ever stop receiving reports in this forum, it's our responsibility to question why that's occurred. And I think the responsibility is not solely the school committees, it's the electorates as well. And ultimately, we're responsive and answerable to the voters in Chelmsford, and we are going to have to explain to them our actions. So if they have questions, they should come and ask us. Next up, recommendation on the accounting system and financial reporting, and there are several recommendations under this category. The first is in regard to school and town munis records. The recommendation says the town and school department should renew their discussion of merging transactions into one database. The revision of the chart of accounts separately noted could be integrated into that process. The town and school department also need to expand the discussion to include the impact of the school department's encumbrance practices to determine any undue burden on town employees. The action taken here is that the integration of the databases is underway. It is not a straightforward thing to do. There's been financial support from the Finance Committee to help move that project forward, and the town accountant is leading that work with assistance from both other town and school district employees. Another recommendation regarding their accounting system is the chart of accounts and reporting. The recommendation states, we recommend that the account structure be reviewed for DESI compliance and for more comprehensive budgeting monitoring based on the responsibility centers. See also the recommendation related to merging the town's munis system with the school departments. So the action taken there, that was one of the first things that Frank Antonelli did when he came in. The chart of accounts has been reviewed both for DESI compliance and modified as well to create the responsibility centers. And again, there's an ongoing responsibility there for the school committee to make sure that that work continues. Another recommendation for the accounting system relates to budget entries. We recommend that the budget be adjusted only when material programmatic changes take place. In those cases, the school committee should authorize the program change as well as voting on the funding sources to cover the additional costs. This is the big policy prescription. We are currently reviewing the financial policies. We are incorporating the recommendations not only of this report, but also of the upcoming NASBO financial operations review. One of the things that we will be doing with the updated policies is making it clear which line item transfers need to be voted on by the school committee and approved. And as part of that approval process, we will identify the funding source that's being used. MASC, which is the Mass Association of School Committees, recommends only 5 distinct line items that require a school committee vote. For example, if you're transferring money between salaries and supplies, that would require a school committee vote. But if you're simply transferring money from one salary line to another, their recommendation is that's not the sort of thing that needs a vote. The concern is that you don't want to get into a situation where you're micromanaging and you're holding things up. You know, if you need copier paper at Byam and you don't need it that month at Harrington, instead of having to come to the school committee, you'd like to see the business manager have the appropriate level of responsibility to make a transition like that themselves. I think the question that we're going to have to thrash out as we do the policy discussion is what level of that oversight is appropriate. I suspect it's going to be rather more detailed than what MASC recommends at this point. The final recommendation for the accounting system and financial reporting relates to the use of blanket purchase orders. Blanket purchase orders should match the amount expected to be expended by a certain vendor for the year. The blanket purchase order can be adjusted when circumstances become clear that the original amount is either too high or too low. That way, the remaining balance and the appropriation is more accurate and can be used to determine availability for other costs or purposes. The action taken here has been again been led by Mr. Antonelli. He's taken responsibility to work with the personnel who have responsibility for creating blanket POs. This has been done for FY15, and reports on the open POs are run as part of the warrants. Once again, there's an ongoing responsibility here for the school committee to see that this practice is continued. The next section of the report discusses accounting for special education costs. There are a couple of recommendations combined to one. The first is the budget column in the special education office spreadsheet should be reconciled to the financial records, which include the general fund and the circuit breaker fund. Purchase orders should be increased on the spreadsheet and the accounting records when additional costs are identified. The school department is required by state and federal laws to provide necessary SPED services, whether there is an appropriation available or not. The increase in purchase orders notifies all that the additional funding is needed. It goes on to recommend that discussions should continue with the collaboratives to send billings timelier and to inform the special education office where additional services are being provided so they can update purchase orders for costs above those authorized in the original purchase order. The action taken here, working with the business consultant, Brad Brooks, who is the Director of Student Services, has created the spreadsheet to track and project expenses for every special education student in the district. I believe a copy of that spreadsheet is available in your budget for FY16. There's one in use for FY15 as well. You can see the students are not individually identified, but they are essentially listed by line, so we can track changes at an individual level. Once again, responsibility of the school committee to maintain that.
Is there a threshold for when it's then brought to your attention? You know, as you get closer to what that amount is, when you're talking
Well, I
about these
think this-
office
this
POs, when you
goes-
get to 80%, is that then brought to the school committee's attention to say we're getting close and we're at 80%, but we're only in February?
Well, what we'll see, and what we do see now in FY15, is the monthly reports that show both the encumbrances, the spending year to date, and the projected money still required. I think there's going to need to be a little bit of discussion about, again, how closely we monitor something like that. Again, the MASC model, if you're simply transferring funds from a PO covering one student to a different student, typically they wouldn't recommend that the school committee sign off on something like that. But I think it's appropriate to establish in policy a mechanism for reviewing those expenses. And I guess we'll talk a little bit with Brad and also with Frank Antonelli about how do you do that in an efficient way. It's something that allows the people who do the work on a daily basis to get their job done, but also keeps the school committee and the community informed of where the money's being spent.
And I didn't mean as far as you guys actually voting on it. I was thinking
Right.
more of just,
Where it goes in a
information
report.
purposes. Yeah.
I mean, I think at this point, you could request to see a copy of the PO or of the spreadsheet.
Maybe
I-
there's
I
just some
don't-
trigger where they bring it to your attention
Yeah,
that
I think
starting to get a little
the bigger
close.
issue would be if the services needed to be changed. Right, that would to me be the trigger that we need to take another look at that line somehow. It needs to be communicated, even if it's not formally approved, but if that PO is changing, we need to understand how that's affecting the budget overall. And that's not at all unusual over the course of the school year. The next section has a couple of recommendations related to grants and revolving funds. The first recommendation is about the school lunch revolving fund, and it says, "The school business manager and the school lunch director should be monitoring costs in the fund and take corrective action so that the fund does not continue running a deficit." The action taken is that it begins with the business consultant and the director of food services having monthly meetings and have developed an explicit budget. Monthly reports tracking the revenues and expenses in the revolving fund are now being provided to the school committee. And once again, we have an ongoing responsibility to maintain that level of accountability. There are a couple of other remarks here. For FY16, if you look at the budget, $75,000 is being budgeted to the food service department from the general fund appropriation, and the projected revolving fund revenue will exceed costs by $29,600. Essentially, this means we are going to run, maybe I should have done the math before, about a $44,000 deficit in the food service revolving fund itself. At a recent meeting with the school committee, the director of food services reported that she thought participation rates had essentially plateaued, and she did not foresee increased participation rates unless and until additional investments were made in personnel and equipment. So what we're being told is that we're going to run a small deficit for the foreseeable future in that fund, and it's going to be something that we're going to have to deal with out of the general fund.
Mike, do you know how that compares to other communities near here?
I cannot give you hard numbers. What I've been told anecdotally is that it's not unusual to have a small deficit. One thing that Chelmsford does that many communities don't is we account for the benefits for the employees within that fund. Many other towns externalize that to the town side. So even some of them that look like they're running a balanced budget are in fact not.
They're just sort of subsidizing the lunches a little bit, essentially.
We're subsidizing it a little bit because we don't want them to get any worse. I think the folks in the food services have done a good job. There have been improvements at the elementary school. There have been improvements at the high school. There are new programs being developed. There are new initiatives being undertaken.
But given
That
the-
said,
the
we have some
restrictions
limits.
of the guidelines.
Well, not only the guidelines, but realistically, we have some limitations in the equipment that's available. Not all the elementary schools have full kitchens. We have some limitations in the number of personnel that we have. This is something that we've talked about. If you want to serve a salad every day, you can either bring it in a bag and have one person open it up, or you can have somebody do the salad prep, and many districts do that. They do it fresh on site. But it takes additional personnel. So you have to bring in more revenue, or you have to commit to carrying those personnel somehow.
Or
we
even the
had-
changes in the kitchen equipment, right?
Or to some extent, you can be more efficient with the equipment. But the director of food services has consistently indicated that it's not going to be enough just to buy new equipment. We're going to need to get more people in there using the equipment. So we've come to a point where it's time to develop a plan, I think, and it may take a year and a half or 2 years to implement. We can either try to rebuild a full kitchen in every school, or we can go to some kind of satellite area where you prepare the foods in the high school kitchen or the high school and middle school kitchens, and then truck them around to the other schools. we don't have a truck right now. So there will be capital costs associated with upgrading the equipment no matter which route we go. We're going to have further discussions on that. For now, I think we're at a relatively, what we're being told is we're at a stable point with food services. It does run a small deficit every year. We need to continue to monitor that. But we think we don't see any big upsets on the horizon. We don't have something like they take all the potato chips out of the vending machines like they did a few years ago that cost us $100,000 a year.
Well, personally, for what it's worth, I know it's ultimately your decision, but when the scouts come in every year, and we've been hearing it for years, food's definitely a priority. And if it,
Absolutely.
for the number of kids we have, if it's $40,000 a year to have, which is maybe what, $5 or $10 per student per year to have food that they're going to like and that they're actually going to eat and that's nutritious, that's definitely, I think, my number one priority. And I'm sure it is for you as well.
Yeah, we have kids for. My kids spend as much time at the school as they do at home, so I need them to be well fed. It is a priority, and it's unfortunate that we can't, that they can't all have gourmet meals every day. I think that's what everybody would like to do, but I think we all recognize that there are constraints on what we can realistically deliver, and it's always a question of how do you do the best job possible with what you've got.
I mean, we even had the discussion at one point about what if we just ignore the federal guidelines and lose some potential grant money just to feed these kids? I mean, we got football players eating, 2 ounces of meat, and they eat, and they're like,
Right.
I'm so hungry I can hardly practice, right? Yet I still
Yeah,
paid
no,
almost
that-
$3 for
and
a lunch.
that's a problem.
They can't get a cheeseburger.
Right.
Hey, if we could keep this focused on the recommendations, that's a different
Okay.
discussion.
Moving on.
Food service is always
We're
an
hungry
interesting
here,
discussion.
so we're getting grumpy, Mike.
Cutting into our dinner time.
All right. The other recommendation related to revolving funds. The transportation, athletics, and student activities account need to be segregated on both the school department and town books. The business office should be reconciling with the athletic director on a periodic basis so he knows exactly how much is in both the revolving fund and the appropriation. Once again, with athletics, we have a situation where it's supported both by revenue that comes into a revolving fund from athletic activity fees. It's also supported by the appropriated general fund because we simply don't raise enough money in fees to cover all the costs. So, actions taken. The transportation, athletics, and student activities accounts have been segregated as was reflected in the most recent FY15 monthly update. That would be the February monthly update. The school business office is reconciling activity fee account balances as well as revolving fund and general fund balances with the athletic director as recommended. A couple of other notes because it's been in the news or people have had questions. The revolving fund for the turf fields is also being actively reviewed and it is included in the monthly budget updates, so people who have questions about that can find that online. And while it's something that wasn't directly addressed by the report, the student activity accounts, as opposed to the athletic activity fee accounts or the fundraising accounts, have also been a topic of some discussion. At the high school, the student activity accounts are being reconciled with the principal, and we expect to have reconciliations available at the middle school level at the next monthly update. And once again, there's an ongoing responsibility to the school committee. All right, the next section deals with staff in the business office. There are a number of recommendations here. I'm going to go through the recommendations first, and then I will discuss some of the actions taken. Regarding the business manager, the business manager needs to have a more in-depth knowledge of the Munis operating system in order to generate more comprehensive reports to the school committee and management team, as well as to provide support to the staff in the business office who do not have a comprehensive Munis background. The business manager should also have a more thoroughgoing understanding of the Massachusetts general laws, especially as related to the process of charging costs to fiscal years and to the proper fund. The town business manager also needs to have the expertise to initiate new initiatives, including combining the town and school department Munis systems, upgrading the chart of accounts, and developing responsibility center-based budgeting and reporting. A closer working relationship needs to be developed between the business manager and the town business office staff and the management team and department heads. The school currently has an interim business manager who has substantial experience in these matters and is in a position to help implement the recommended changes. As I think you know, the current business consultant has turned down an offer to be the interim business manager, and he will be leaving at the end of June. A search for a full-time business manager is underway, and the responsibility for implementing these recommendations essentially lies with the superintendent, whose job it is to recommend a candidate to the school committee, with the school committee, whose responsibility it is to either accept the superintendent's candidate or to reject it and provide reasons for the rejection. And to a lesser extent, with the hiring advisory committee, who are reviewing some of the candidate, or who are reviewing all of the candidates who have applied for the position. Recommendations regarding the school accountant. The accountant position needs to have a more thorough knowledge of the Munis system and training in Massachusetts school accounting principles and requirements. The accountant also needs to have resources available to help attain direction on complex and unique transactions and issues that sometimes come up. The demands on the accountant's position have been substantial, as current activity needs to be kept up to date while having to go back and evaluate prior activity, support the new interim business manager, which should be business consultant, and various professionals looking at the fiscal 2014 issues and new initiatives. Recommendations for the accounts payable staff. The staff in accounts payable has been with the school department for a period of time and has knowledge of the Munis system sufficient to fulfill her responsibilities. However, she could benefit from more comprehensive training in Munis to facilitate extraction and analysis of transactions. Some of the accounts are complex, such as electricity, which has charges and credits which need to be tracked and monitored. Also, monitoring balances and purchase orders and encumbrances should be more comprehensive. We are concerned that with the staff downsizing in this position, there is adequate time to process, monitor, and control costs that run through accounts payable. At one time, there was different staff processing transactions for transportation, utilities, specialty and supplies, and other categories. All of that is currently being done by one person. And finally, recommendations related to the payroll department. After the school year begins, reports of active employees should be sent to each responsibility center and verified for proper allocation. Communication needs to be better between the departments and the payroll office to assure allocations are correct. The school department should consider reassigning some of the duties in payroll. There needs to be improved edits for quality control and segregation between processing approval and master file maintenance. So some of these recommendations build together, go together. I think if you look at them as a whole, one of the concerns is about adequate levels of staffing and kind of reserve capability if somebody's out for the week, if somebody has a vacation. Is the staff that's there sufficient to do what needs to be done? To look into this, the school committee's requested that the administration prepare updated job descriptions and training profiles based on these recommendations. One of the concerns is that if people come into the job without the right skill set, it's our responsibility to create that skill set with them. It's not unusual to find somebody who's an excellent candidate but lacks one or two features that you would ideally like to have. We need to make sure that we're driving towards making all of our people better in a structured way, and that's the point of having the job descriptions and building a training profile for each individual based on how they match up to the job description. We've asked that task be complete by May 15th, so that is something that's ongoing right now. You will also note in the preliminary FY16 budget that there's a request for an additional FTE in the school business office. I think we all recognize that is something we're going to have to look at very closely as we get a little bit more feedback on what resources we have available to us. It would be nice to have another person, but we can't just quit if we don't. So strategies to deal with situations like that. I think we'd be talking about cross-training some of the people that we do have so that they can do more than one thing. It's a matter of covering for a day or two. You know, I think one of the early recommendations talked about encumbrances and the effect that those practices have on the town side. What we've also heard is that the payroll in particular has had some repercussions over in the town offices, and we need to be respectful of that. We need to make sure that what we're doing isn't creating additional work for other people. And so we need to have that capability within. That means additional training, and it probably means additional training for more than one person. Another possibility would be some kind of shared responsibility for personnel between the school department and the town. And I think that's something that both the board and the committee have committed to looking at further. There's no specific plan in place or a timeline, but it's something that bears looking into. In terms of checking the payroll, all employees have been reviewed by the school business office and principals at the pertinent responsibility centers for both FY15 and for the preliminary FY16 budget that you have in front of you. This is something that's going to need to be done every year once school starts to make sure that people are assigned to the right location. So this is a biannual thing. You're going to need to do it as you prepare the budget. You're also going to need to do it as the school year starts and people are in place. So that's going to be an ongoing responsibility, both for the people who have the responsibility centers and for the school committee. That concludes the presentation, essentially. I just have a couple of remarks, and then I'd take any more questions that you have. This is a big change for the way that we do business. I think this has been certainly a change for the school committee. I think the finance committee has done a lot of work as well. They are taking a much deeper look at the budget than they have in the past. In the past, they had a couple of people come in and review the budget. This year, they have multiple people. They've split up the responsibility centers. They're putting a lot of time and effort into this as well. They've also asked for monthly updates on the budget. I'll commend you as well for having me here. This is the sort of thing that we need to do. I think everybody has stepped up. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes you hear criticisms from quarters that you haven't heard it from before. But I think the most important thing is that if everybody approaches it in a spirit of good faith, we all understand that it's a difficult thing to do, and we do the best we can with respect, then we're better for the additional questions, not worse. And to date, I think everybody on the committee and the other boards have approached it in that manner, and I'm excited about it going forward.
Any questions, comments?
Just have a quick question. Paul, this may be more directed towards you. So the comment under recommendations for accounts payable, so some of the accounts are complex, such as electricity, which is charges and credits. Is there anything we can do to, I know we have, the one dedicated person here at town. Is there anything we could do to help them over there understand, once you got the DASCO contract really up and running and everything all plugged in and going, maybe there's a little more collaboration there to help them through that.
We provide the detail because we're receiving the credits from the Bolton Orchard site now for, I guess, our second year. And so when it comes in as a integrated invoice, and then our staff over here in general government, we segregate out by account, which then goes to school and so forth. So they are able to track it. In fact, I recall seeing Frank Antonelli talking about how he's monitoring that on a monthly basis, and sometimes there are irregularities, I guess, by the vendors in terms of when the credits come in, and we've noted that as well. So the answer is yes, we are doing that.
Okay.
And that's something for the school committee as well. We need to do some work to educate ourselves so that we can provide effective oversight there. I mean, again, there are some irregularities. It doesn't look like everything else, and that's fine. It just means that we have to do a little extra work to make sure we understand what's going on as well.
Anything, Matt?
Oh, I just want to say I know that you've been, from your earlier email, you've been making great progress on these recommendations. There's certainly a a lot of work to do and a lot of different things to implement, and it seems that you're really well on your way, so I'm excited to see how the next year unfolds. I think you guys are doing a great job on implementing these recommendations. I hope you find it helpful to get those more in-depth reports on a monthly basis. It seems like, from what you said, that that's going to be more helpful and just better than an Excel spreadsheet that may have more totals and things like that. So, no, I'm just really looking forward to next year and continuing to work with you and the Finance Committee moving forward. So.
Yeah, I think that the emphasis needs to be on continuing the work. It's not enough to do it once. We have to continue, keep it up. But I agree with you. I think this is a good start.
George, any comments?
Just unfortunate that have all
Mm-hmm.
supply as of right now, so. Take it little by little and just gradually get to where you
Right.
it's gonna be a little difficult, I think, with
It'll be a process of continuous improvement. This is, you can look at it as kind of a quality control initiative. It takes years to get yourself to an ISO 9000 certification, and I think that's where we want to go. I don't think we're going to get there this year. But if we don't aim for that, we won't. And so I think we do a little bit more every year. We identify the resources that we have available. We use them as fully as we can, and then we try to take the next step.
Like, how much of an overlap period do you think there may be with the new business manager coming in? Is there going to be some sort of training and transition period there?
The hope had been for the superintendent to present a candidate, I believe, on April 7th. I think we're going to need to cancel that April 7th meeting because it's election day. And
Yeah.
so maybe the following week. It depends on how the candidates turn out. I think, if you'll recall, the last time we hired a high school principal, I think we had to reopen that search. I believe the past school business manager was also identified after reopening a search.
That was an on-board job.
Where's Alvin? I think we want to get the right person in place. The hope would be to bring somebody in April so that they have some considerable overlap. But we're not going to rush just to do that. We'll figure something out.
Okay, I appreciate your comments about how, your committee is looking at things differently than they have before. I think probably everybody in town, especially the elected and appointed officials, look at things with a different lens now than we did 6 or 8 months ago, and that's going to be a good thing overall. And just wanted to mention a couple of the things that Mike and I have spoken about. One is the DOR letter, which we'll have that in hopefully, close to final format at our next meeting to approve to send to the DOR for that request of their feasibility study. And the other thing is something that has been mentioned a couple of times is the possibility of there was a suggestion to put together like a subcommittee of members from the 3 boards to come up with ideas for perhaps cost savings or revenue enhancements or just efficiencies, rather than have a formal committee. What Mike and I talked about doing is at our next meetings, and ask the Finance Committee to do the same thing, to ask for recommendations from each of the members and then bring those to some kind of leadership meeting where they would be consolidated. It's more of an informal process, and I think it would allow for more, I would almost say off the wall or out of the box type suggestions that might be looked at that in a more formal setting might immediately be dismissed, but in a more informal setting, maybe, you could have a little bit more discussion and maybe more brainstorming, and then, to go away from that maybe a little bit and come up with some ideas. So, again, that's kind of how we're looking at that, to bring those forward, and then any that might look feasible to then assign those to who the staff in the town that might be responsible for them. So we're still kind of working out all the details on that, but that's general format on how we would go forward with I think I
Yep, I think that's
described that pretty well.
that's an excellent summary.
People, I apologize if it's been said at your meetings or explained, but a lot of people have still been asking me about kindergarten. I was wondering if you could
yeah.
maybe just talk, you're just
Well,
like, maybe.
speaking of things that require money,
I know.
kindergarten. Yeah, what we got a recommendation, a proposal from the administration for kindergarten this year. It relied on.
You're talking about full-day kindergarten.
Full day kindergarten with and no fee. It relied on a number of assumptions that clearly were not going to come to pass. We've put it off for this year. It's not going away. Every day, practically, it seems you see another town has added kindergarten, and lately the stories I've been seeing is towns switching from a fee-based kindergarten to a free-based kindergarten. We have, there are a couple of considerations that still argue very strongly for a non-fee kindergarten. One is simply the idea that the reason to go to full-day kindergarten is to address the achievement gap between high and low-income families, and while some very low-income families would be exempted from the fee. Again, you've got that big group of people in the middle class who wouldn't necessarily be exempted from the fee, but might not have the resources that they'd like to have for something like that. And it is a state mandate that if you provide a fee-based full-day kindergarten, you must also provide a free half-day kindergarten. There's also logistic issues there. We really don't have space in the current elementary schools to add full-day kindergarten to the four existing full-day, or the four existing elementary schools. That's why the proposal envisioned adding classes to the Westlands as well. Unfortunately, if you have a fee-based kindergarten, you have full-day, you have half-day, you have multiple bus routes, and it's not hard to construct a scenario where a parent might be putting a first grader on a bus to go to South Row and another kindergartner on a bus to go to the Westlands. That's clearly not a good situation for the people who find themselves in it. We still believe, I think, as a committee, that the right thing to do is to have a non-fee-based system. It will be something that we're just going to continue. We're going to have to continue to work on it. We got slightly better offers from the state in terms of financial support than we had expected. But other towns and cities are seeing some of that support being taken away. Again, we all read the news. We all know what the budget situation is. It's kind of scary. You don't want to start it, provide it one year, and then find out you can't provide it the next. I don't have a good answer. It's not going to happen this year. We need to make it happen.
Thank you.
Governor Baker's proposed state budget for July 1 eliminated the kindergarten grant program funding.
Oh, really?
So that, so if we wouldn't, at this point, again, it's only his budget proposal. We haven't seen what the legislature is going to do. Right now, that was not included in the governor's budget. Other peril going forward, as Mike described.
Like Mike said, it's got to be sustainable.
Yeah.
But at some point, the concern is that it will be imposed upon us, and then our options will narrow.
But it sounds as though you not only have a budget issue, but you have a logistics issue.
Yeah, of course, the simplest solution to the logistics issue is just to do major building expansions at the 4 elementary schools.
Just.
Or reopen the
that's simple.
Or reopen the
Or
Westlands.
we reopen the Westlands, and maybe we need to look at that. But CHIPS has grown by leaps and bounds, and it's not straightforward. You can't just send them back to where they were at the high school. It's a good problem to have, but.
Okay. Well, thank
Okay.
you.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, next up is Steve Yonley. Thanks, Steve, for your patience.
Good evening. Stephen Yonley with the Department of Public Works here tonight. I'll be real brief.
we'll have one street acceptance coming up for Springtown meeting. This is the first step in a 3 or 4 step process. So tonight, from the board, included in your packet, should have been the motion that needs to be read, that the board votes to lay out Bittersweet Lane as a public way. And then the second page is a letter to the planning board that would be endorsed by typically the chair. And then I go and make the presentation to planning board if they have any comments, and then right before town meeting, I come back to this board for signatures and the like for the rest of the pages, and then the final step in the process is town meeting approval.
How many homes are on this, on Bittersweet Lane?
Well, it's kind of it's like a paper street subdivision, if you're familiar where it is. It's off of Jordan Road, by the Strawberry Hill ball field. There's 4 houses in the back. The public portion only goes in to just past where the entrance into the parking lot for the ball field is. The ball field was constructed as part of the approval for the subdivision. So there are 4 houses back there.
Okay, you said the public part of this,
The-
of the street?
I'll step to this real quick.
Right.
It's public here. Parking lot. This is private back.
So Lynch, is it Lynch Way?
Yeah,
That's-
Lynch Way's private.
That's private?
Yep.
Okay. But Bittersweet Lane goes all the way through, so we'll be maintaining just halfway down, is that what you're
Yep.
saying?
Exactly. The intent was, the subdivision was approved back in the early 2000s. And the intent was originally for it all to be private, but then the discussion began with Mr. Pearson and myself, that if we're gonna have a public parking lot off of a private road, that typically in town, the private roads are maintained by the homeowners. It's not fair to the homeowners to have, 2 or 3 months of baseball traffic coming in and out on their road. So the decision was made to accept the public portion in, I think it's right around 200 feet. That way, we're responsible for the drainage, the road surface, and all the like, and obviously, we're responsible for the parking lot. But
So-
then from the entrance into the parking lot back, that's on the homeowners, that's all private.
So when you'd be plowing snow, you would just go up?
Yeah, we'll
up
come
to
in,
there,
loop
put
through
it-
the parking lot, come right back out.
Okay. All right. Any questions for Steve on this? All right. Any motion?
I move that the Board of Selectmen vote its intention to lay out a portion of Bittersweet Lane as a public way known as Bittersweet Lane, as shown on a plan entitled Road Acceptance Plan in Chelmsford, Mass., dated August 14th, 2014, and revised January 9th, 2015, prepared by Hancock Associates, and to forward the proposed layout as shown on the plan to the Planning Board for its comments and recommendations pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 41, Section 811.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Thanks, Steve.
Thank you.
Okay, on to town manager reports.
Thank you. Couple budget matters, sort of bring up to speed and sort of where we're going, and let me sort of just summarize. We just haven't gotten any breaks this year. It seems like all the news and continuing in the past week has just not been favorable in terms of budget development. As you know, with the new governor, he had until the first Wednesday in March, which was last Wednesday, the 4th, to submit his proposed state budget. This followed the period of the winter. So as we sort of transition, the good news, and it's probably the little bit of good news in the budget, is for the current year, aside from snow and ice, we seem to be in a good position. As I emailed you last Thursday, as of the 1st of March, our snow and ice deficit was $476,763, which means we've spent just over $1.6 million in snow and ice this year, which is obviously, again, $476,000 over the $1.43 million budget. Since then, we did have the minor storm in March. The good news is we were notified by Massachusetts Emergency Management Agency that the communities across the Commonwealth, including Chelmsford, basically from Worcester County east, did qualify for that first storm, the Juno storm, as they refer to it, for the federal reimbursement. Since that time, and for us, it represents almost $200,000. Again, but that's subject to federal audit and review and so forth. They reimburse you for 75% of your expenditures. As I think I described the last meeting, since that time, the governor and FEMA have requested costs for all of the 4 major storms that took place in February, and they're trying a novel approach of trying to treat it as a comprehensive event as opposed to individual storms, which has been the norm. And so they're in sort of uncharted waters. And we've submitted that information. It was roughly 4 times the amount, but slightly under, and that's being gathered across the Commonwealth. We probably won't know the results of that probably for several weeks. In addition, the Mass Municipal Association has done a survey. We responded to that with these numbers that I just gave you. As of March 1st, they wanted to know what communities across the state were expending for snow and ice. They anticipate they'll have those results in a couple of weeks. So I think relatively in terms of the winter, we're doing okay. We've been told that any snow and ice monies that do get provided will not be received this fiscal year. They will come in after July 1. And the governor even proposed in his budget activities to allow communities to defer the costs over 2 years if they so chose. Again, what has been our custom and norm is as we get towards the Springtown meeting, in mid-April, we will see where we stand. By then, we should be pretty much hopefully out of the woods in terms of the snow and ice situation. And then we'll look to see if we can transfer from within accounts so that we're not carrying in a deficit for the year ahead. What that obviously will do is it will reduce the free cash at the end of the year because we'll be doing internal transfers. But in essence, it's sort of it may sum out to the same because in essence you've got to, if you don't resolve it this fiscal year, you have to immediately fund it before you can set the tax rate in December. So it has to get addressed. We'll see what comes with the federal efforts. I think so. I think the relative good news in that is that even though we're over budget, by not an insignificant amount of money, again at this point around $500,000, I think we're compared to our peers, which is how we measure ourselves. I think we're okay in terms of the fact that we do budget with a realistic 5-year average, and also the fact that I think we've managed the expenditures. I mean, I don't even want to think what some communities are spending. With either the city of Boston, probably the most familiar one in terms of what they've done to remove snow from the streets and so forth. And also, we ended up in now that the danger has passed. We did not expend money to shovel roofs completely, which some communities did, and so we didn't incur a large expense there. As we noted at the time, we did measure and take readings and so forth, and there's a risk with any activity, but in this case, we didn't suffer any ill effects. We did monitor situations, and so again, we're in good shape. So that's probably the end of the relatively good news of the budget situation. In terms of the bad news, as I said, 2 things have come across in the last week, and more. And the final piece to the puzzle will come out tomorrow evening. As I mentioned, the governor submitted his proposed budget last Wednesday, and on the surface, it sounded good news. And in fact, I'll use this presentation. It's just 4 slides, and because I made them up today, and I'm not asking for any votes, but I just want, I'll pass these so you can have them. If you can get me one of those back, I'll give it to Vivian so she can have it. But the first question that everyone talks about, well, how did the town fare with the governor's proposed state budget? Again, the simple answer is we had a net increase of $28,223. Not that we don't mind $28,000, but remember, we're operating about a $115 million operation. The governor, this governor sort of followed the lead of the previous governor. He announced this is the highest funding for education in the Commonwealth's history for local education. This governor's standard was a minimum $20 per student, which is what we received. We received an additional $101,120, which is $20 more per student, and so our total amount is $10,447,738. Under the previous administration, the minimum funding was $25 per student at the end, and earlier it was $50, and you remember, in previous years. So the bottom line is we welcome the assistance. Where this governor stepped up to the plate, and again, it's sort of a pick your priorities, but at the end of the day, it's all local aid, is he did provide, for the first time in years, meaningful increase in unrestricted general government aid, which used to be formerly known as the lottery and additional assistance. There was a 3.6% increase, which for Chelmsford's case was an additional $162,588. And so our total in unrestricted general government aid is now up to $4.68 million. So the good news is you say, gee, we got an extra 101,000 in Chapter 70, an extra 162,000. Well, how do we net down to 223? And that's the second slide. We get hit with a large number of reimbursement reductions and assessment increases, and primarily they're driven around education. Our charter school reimbursement was reduced by $57,000 to $206,000. The amount that we receive from the state for property tax exemption for veterans, blind, elderly, surviving spouse, and so forth, the statutory exemptions to the property tax, that was reduced by $27,704 down to $184,000 total. And then the last major one, which was not insignificant, is that our assessments for students attending school choice and charter school tuition assessments increased by $187,863 to $1.7 million. Now, we all know that the choice numbers, fluctuate over the course of the year. They take attendance 3 times and so forth. But based on the information available to the governor in the budget, as you can see, we net out with $28,223. That's sort of the revenue piece in terms of the state aid. You look at, well, what are we looking at in terms of, the significant, what we look at as the significant budgetary increases. And all of these are bad news. And really worse news than we've seen in previous years. Today, we received notification from Blue Cross, Meyer, our insurer, that our employee and retiree health insurance premiums for the, what we call the benchmark plan, which is basically the state GIC equivalent, that increase in premiums is 7.3%. Last year, you remember, it went down 1%, and that helped us. Again, we spend over $10 million a year in employee and retiree health insurance. You can see the impact there. That 7.3%, mind you, and if you've been reading about what's going on with the Group Insurance Commission, that's after plan design changes. So, and again, when the governor announced his budget last Wednesday, the Group Insurance Committee met. Dolores Mitchell, who chairs that, basically they came out after the meetings they had in February, they came out and voted their plan design changes and their premium increase. This 7.3% is the benchmark, which is basically the Tufts Navigator plan, which is the most subscribed employee health plan for the state and municipal communities that are in the GIC. So what's going on here is the employees and retirees are going to be faced with higher co-payments, higher deductibles, so therefore they're going to be paying more to purchase prescription drugs. They're going to pay more to see a specialist. They're going to pay more if they go to certain inpatient and outpatient services. We've asked Maya Blue Cross to give us a written description of the changes. They are available on the GIC website. We've asked for a specific one, and we will be having a meeting in 3 weeks with our insurance advisory committee. So the bottom line, and then the bottom line is you end up getting lesser of a plan and still a 7.3% increase in premiums. We've done the calculations based on our enrollments, and the impact of this is a $649,000 increase in the budget for the upcoming year to pay for that cost. That's significant. The other news we had heard back in December, which was, again, not good news, was that our county retirement assessment from Middlesex, they do every 2 years a actuarial study. That's going up this year by 9.44%, or over $600,000. You can see the number is actually $612,334. Not good news. Governor's budget comes out last Wednesday. We see the effects of the change in enrollments, the governor's Chapter 70 funding, and the shift of minimum required contributions to Neshoba Tech. Tomorrow evening, the Neshoba Tech School Committee will be voting its proposed fiscal year 2016 budget and member community assessments. The best handle I have on this point would be the town of Chelmsford would receive a 10% increase in its assessment to Neshoba Tech, which is basically $250,000. As we saw earlier this evening, we had the chair of the school committee. And you see this binder in front of you, they put in a significant amount of work. I won't use the term yeomans because I just don't think that's appropriate in Chelmsford. But they use a significant amount of work.
Are you taunting me?
No, no, they put in a lot of work, and they came out with a budgetary request that's an increase of $2.15 million. Again, it depends on what you use for the base. I tend to use, we had the $50 million initial assessment. We then had to provide what they calculate to be their budgetary shortfall. And then beyond that, you had the one-time payment of on prior year bills. I don't include the prior year bills as part of the base of the budget. But the bottom line is they're looking for over $2 million in assessments, no matter how you slice it. And then we have costs, and sitting down, for example, we're seeing a marked increase, we talked about in the past, for veterans benefit services of almost $100,000. It's 95 is the number Regina feels is reasonable in our meetings with her. And then obviously your payroll goes up, your Medicare tax goes up. So if you just look at the list that's there, without even touching it, as you see at the bottom, other general government budgetary increases, you're at $3.78 million. Now, remember, we talked earlier, we're getting an extra $28,000 from the governor. So this is the final slide. Where does this revenue come from to do that? Well, let me discuss what's available. A mathematical exercise, if you take a 2.5% increase in the current property tax levy, that's just over $2 million, $2,050,000. A reasonable / aggressive approach to new growth would be 1.35 million.
You usually have $1 million, right?
Yeah, and we're looking at the days of the days of being conservative are gone, and for two reasons. One is we're at a place now where our reserves and through our stabilization fund are at sufficient level of the midpoint of the 7.5, and also, quite frankly, we're not getting there. Being conservative, and the strange part is when you sit here and you say, wait a minute, we're in a 5.5% unemployment economy. Everything we see tends to start saying that things should be improving. We're seeing it in motor vehicle excise. We're seeing it somewhere. We're trying to come in with realistic numbers because, quite frankly, what you're going to see is we're hitting the wall. We've hit the wall. This budget's going to be a struggle, and so again, using a estimated new growth of 1.35 million. That's realistic. Again, we bumped up motor vehicle excise based upon the January commitment that came in this year, based upon what we caught last year, based upon the fact that we still are reading about and hearing that the average age of vehicles is still, considerable on the road, because remember, motor vehicle tends to be a little cyclical. And the miscellaneous, so we've got roughly almost a $500,000 in local receipts. And then the other thing to point out, and this is where it gets real interesting, and when we look back at the budget that we're in right now, we applied almost $650,000 from free cash to what I consider to be ongoing or recurring budgetary expenses. The 588,751 that I mentioned a few moments ago regarding the school budget for ongoing operations, and then the general government, there was 59.5, and that had to do with items such as remember, we had to give some more money to the library for their staffing. There was there was a computer software account and so forth that we had in the IT department and so forth. Again, that's not talking about the one-time monies for the unpaid bills or the extraordinary overtime issues that we had with the fire department with firefighters out injured, or like the payouts for the outgoing police chief or the assessment centers. I'm just talking what you call recurring or normal operations. So if you look at that additional revenue and you net that out, you're roughly 3.25 million, 3.26. As we said before, we're at 3.7, 3.8 on expenses, and we haven't even talked about the total tally of the budget. The bottom line is I'm 95% complete the budget, waiting for the last vote from Neshoba tomorrow evening, sort of proofing the numbers again. And my plan and schedule is to present the detailed budget report to the Finance Committee this Thursday evening. I will come back at our next meeting and discuss the budget further. Darlene Lucy, our town accountant, will be here. She'll give you details on the year-to-date situation. The bottom line is, you can see why I said we cannot meet the school's funding request. It's just not attainable. That being the case, I will give a number for the school as the chair is looking for, and I have a department head meeting on Thursday. Either Wednesday or Thursday, I will notify the school committee. I'll notify you what the number is, what I'm coming out with. You'll see the material in advance of the Finance Committee on Thursday evening. I'll send it to the Finance Committee as well. What I can tell you is we're doing level service. Perhaps the schools may not consider their budget level service. That will be a subject of debate because their number had level service plus enhancements. Again, what's level service, what's an enhancement in terms of the fact they want to restore some positions that were cut this year. They want to add, as you heard earlier, some accounting and business office positions. The bottom line is I can't meet their number. I can't meet the unmet needs of many town departments as well. And that goes across the spectrum from public safety to council on aging for providing transportation for senior citizens, and so forth. Where is this going to end? The news just doesn't get it. What we're seeing is when we look at these issues, the concern, again, beyond the immediate year is which of these we expect to improve in the future. Retiree and active employee health insurance, something has to be done. It's obviously not a Chelmsford problem. It's not a Massachusetts problem. There's a general problem of healthcare inflation. We've been told already by Middlesex County Retirement, or our assessment for the following year, because again, it's a 2-year snapshot. So that's roughly just under $500,000 next year. I think let's call it a trend now for Neshoba Tech enrollment, because it's gone on for so many years, where we've seen in 5 years an increase by a third in Chelmsford enrollment to the school, and our assessment's gone by 50%. Clearly, the schools will be needing it, and also what ends up happening and what's not in these numbers, and again becomes the next component. We still do not have a labor agreement with our two police unions. That has to be funded both on an ongoing basis as well as the retroactive. And then also in 6 to 9 months, we'll be back at the bargaining table with all the units, the town, because the contracts will be expiring June 30th, 2016. We also have a governor who's committed to not raising taxes. We have a House Speaker who doesn't want to raise taxes. We also recognize that the state government has its hands full, given the problems of the MBTA, transportation, and so forth. So, you know,
And we have a school committee.
and we have a school committee
that
that's
wants to implement full-day
full-day
kindergarten.
kindergarten.
And
We-
be able to sustain it.
Right. So the bottom line is, I would agree with the chair. I don't see how we fund full-day kindergarten this year. Again, I think the whole question of full-day kindergarten or any program becomes the choice of the school committee. They'll have 50-some-odd million dollars plus their grants and other programs. It's up to them to decide what to fund. In my presentation, I do take some time to address a number of school issues that, again, based on data, and you've seen me do this before from the DESE, which is the state source in terms of comparative relative data, enrollment data, and so forth. But again, that's their call, that's their choice. You know, I think some tough decisions will have to be made because I can't meet their number. And what I will tell you is, proportionately, because think how this budget's going to come together. I have no choice but to fund Middlesex. You know, we've got to fund our health insurance. We're going to fund our Neshoba Tech assessment, even if we don't agree with it, you know, because we know how it's going to make out across the district and so forth. You know, we've got to fund veterans benefits. The problem with the veterans benefits, we don't get the reimbursement from the state, 75% till a year later and so forth. Those all come fixed. And then basically I then have some discretion in terms of the town and the schools. My track record has shown that I've always provided, you know, support for education. I think that's a priority in this community. I understand the values and what we talk about. You will see that again, but I'm telling you, despite that, it's not going to be close to the number that they're seeing. The other thing that I'm going to tell you, and explain to you, and this is the one that I've really been struggling with. I understand the board's policy and preference that I will not present an unbalanced budget that will rely on certified free cash to town meeting in April. What I feel I have to do instead, and you may say it's a distinction without a difference, but at this point, I don't see any other way around it, is to prepare a budget that will draw upon our stabilization fund, which then would be replenished at fall town meeting once the year ends. We did it this year to the tune of $648,251. My guess is when it's all said and done, meaning all said and done, that will probably be around that perspective. By saying that, I don't mean to be disrespecting the board's direction or policy. The reason I suggest this, and you'll see the details on Thursday as it's come together, is the only other choice is to make what would be significant cuts in the service of operations of this community. And I know how hard we worked and felt uncomfortable with the idea of closing firehouses, of having inadequate personnel and departments, and also including the school department. The end of the day, as we note, we are going to generate free cash at the end of this year. We've seen some of that. We saw that the Glenview landfill made their payment of hundreds of thousands of dollars for the delinquent taxes. In speaking to the town accountant and the finance director, I asked them, I said, given where you are today, what do you foresee being the free cash at the end of the year? Because that's a question I'll be asked, probably as soon as Thursday evening. Their answer is they don't see it going over $1 million, and it's probably, you know, closer to $750,000. And so in essence, we're sort of going back to the future in terms of if you go back to the budgets in the mid-2000s, there was that inflow and outflow from the stabilization fund during the budget process. We're at that point because, quite frankly, I don't see how we avoid it. The challenge is twofold. One is you don't want to be outflowing more than you're inflowing because we've seen what that does to the town's reserves and its bond rating. The other challenge is managing it. Remember, I cannot appropriate monies for contracts until they're settled. But again, we've got to give a realistic picture of where we're going. So I just don't want you being shocked, disappointed, upset, what have you. I also don't want it to feel that I disregarded or disrespected your input, but I don't know any other way around this. And again, mine is only the budget that's put on the floor of the town meeting. If the board, as it's constituted after the April elections, and the finance committee and school committee as they're constituted as we go into town meeting as well, and town meeting will ultimately make that decision. I don't say this lightly. I mean, I hear the requests, and it's been noted that, you know, members of this board and others in the community are looking for property tax relief. I don't see where it comes from. You know, we spent well over $1 million in free cash this year for not only these recurring numbers of the 650, but the one-time issues. And then we've got the snow and ice challenges that are still uncertain. Bottom line is I will provide a balanced budget at town meeting. It will be balanced, meaning the appropriation at town meeting will be available funds, including the stabilization fund. So it will be balanced when we leave the town meeting, so therefore, if we never came back to town meeting, it would be a legal balanced budget. But I quite frankly, it's not a path that I prefer to go down. I just don't see I just don't see an alternative. And I'd welcome any input in the weeks that come ahead, but I don't know how you do it. If you only get $28,000 in additional state aid, and maybe we can generate $500,000 from other revenues, motor vehicle excise and miscellaneous, the only other source that we have is the property tax, and recognizing that the property tax is already over 3/4 of our budget. So I think I'll just end it there, and again, I will have for you within the next 2 to 3 days. I will email you out. It'll be posted. It'll be presented to the finance committee, the detailed budget. But it's just the reality. I know no matter what's proposed, there will be many perspectives on the budget, but I just think I think it's in keeping with what's sound for the community. Also, it's in keeping with how the community and town meeting has voted to support the community in the past. And also, I just think there's just no alternative short of identification of cuts. And I can tell you, I've been on this board through the worst of the recession in 2008, 2009. We looked everywhere for efficiencies and cuts, and the school department did it. Let's give them credit for that. They went and did the outsourcing of the custodians. They went and did the lunch program. They went and did a number of items. We've done a number of items, including this health insurance agreement, which had we not had this agreement in place, our increase wouldn't have been the 7.3. We were told by Blue Cross that if our plan didn't have that agreement and the plan design didn't change, our increase would have been 10.9%. And again, we're not the only community. The average increase, as we heard at the annual meeting, was over 9%. And we have communities that are in double digits. And so, you know, we've done what we can do. We've done all the solar. We're doing everything we can, and we're going to continue to look and work as the chair of the school committee said earlier. But the bottom line is, you know, we've got to deal with the realities that are before us. And as I said earlier, nothing has broken our way. And again, I just have not seen anything in terms of nothing breaking right. We have our contracts. We got to fund the 2% to everybody. That's cost of living. And as you know, when you read, we're seeing wage pressure now in the economy and so forth. 2% is not extravagant for a change in pay scales. And as you can see going forward, there just doesn't seem to be a lot of good news on the horizon. And so it troubles me because, again, I don't know where we go beyond this point. You said, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll finish up, we're at the wall. We've hit the wall. Where do we go beyond this that's sustainable? But again, we can just do it on a year-by-year basis. The one thing that I think, as a closing comment, the governor has proposed his budget. What we haven't heard and really seen is a sense of municipal relief or municipal reform. His budget did not, and again, I'm not here critiquing or criticizing, but what we haven't heard from the legislature or the governor is what is municipal relief. Going forward, what is the package? And I know the Senate's doing their listening tour and so forth, but these problems that I describe are not Chelmsford-centric. I think that they're you know, the increase in the retirement system may be different in different communities. But the bottom line is, we're on a path that's not going to be sustainable, not only for Chelmsford but elsewhere in terms of how to operate. But again, we've got the immediate task before us, and that's what I'm attempting to do. And again, I will give you all the details and final numbers in the next couple days. And again, I'll be presenting it in detail on Thursday evening to the Finance Committee. But thank you for your patience throughout
thank
that long sense of remarks.
Okay, more to come,
Yeah.
for sure.
Quick question, I have a,
Yeah.
Paul, I have a question. Regarding if you were to start the year, going to Springtown meeting, with a budget that utilized some funding from the stabilization fund, to make sure that it's balanced, but then by fall town meeting, we did know our free cash number and we were able to use that to offset the funding. Would the funding essentially not have to come out of the stabilization fund, but it would have been appropriated but never essentially used? Is that how that could work? I mean,
No, you'd have to amend the vote. But, so in essence, it's just circular, because again, stabilization fund can be used for any lawful purpose. So you would be putting into free cash, from your free cash, which will get certified the end of August, an amount that hopefully will exceed what we're drawing from the stabilization fund. I think the number that I'm looking at, the $500,000 or so number, although once you settle the police contract, it's a little bit more. Again, it's roughly around what we've done this year, is sustainable. I don't anticipate we're going to get any turnbacks from the school department. We look at that, we look at other departments, we look at the snow and ice situation. But no, it's sort of a distinction without a difference, quite frankly. And that's why I really pained me, and I took respect to the fact that I didn't want to look like I was basically flying in the face of the board's policy by saying, hey, Paul, you're just playing a shell game. You're using stabilization instead of free cash at the town meeting. No, because I understand the board's intent, and I understand the desires to provide tax relief. I just don't know how you obtain it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
think
don't
he's, we've heard this before.
Yeah, so I don't know how
I'm
how
not
else to do
asking
it.
questions
Oh,
about
no,
that.
but, I'm just,
Okay.
I think we're ready to move
You just
on.
gave like a half-an-hour budget presentation. I just
Okay.
want to ask one or two questions.
Okay,
I don't
do
think
you
that's
have-
inappropriate.
Okay, do you have another one?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to just comment on that and say, I mean, I think it is personally preferential to say this is our funding source. We're using the stabilization fund with the anticipation of paying it back this way, rather than the perception that it's unbalanced, then we're going to pay it back. Even though neither may be preferable, I think that is probably a better way to put it to town meeting, personally.
Can I make a comment? Paul, I appreciate your comment about, I don't want to appear disrespectful, and I do feel like we are in a predicament, because I feel like my concern is that the town has a budget that we can no longer afford. And I don't think it's going to get any better. So while I understand your predicament of us having to use stabilization fund to make us whole, I don't see how that would get any better next year or the next or the next. So, I mean, I really think we need to start planning this out. And, I know at a FinCom meeting you had said, I expect to start, for the next 5 years or something, a deficit budget, just because that's how it's going forward. Well, how long can we afford that with our stabilization fund? And if we've got a school committee that's saying full-day kindergarten for free is coming, then realistically, we have to add that in on top of that number, and it's almost as though we can keep this budget afloat for maybe 5 more years, and then we're in a crisis.
But I don't think that's what he's, I think we need to wait till we see all the numbers and everything, but the anticipation is that everything that will be appropriate out of stabilization will go back in, plus, and possibly more.
Yes.
A minimal, not
Right.
much. So, like I said, I think we need to see how the rest of the budget works itself out. We can do all the speculation we want right now, and it's not gonna mean anything until we see what actually happens. Okay, on to the spring annual town warranty. Do you want to go through that again, Paul?
Yeah, we have before you for your signature this evening, the warrant for the spring annual town meeting. The interesting warrant, only 22 articles for spring annual town meeting, which is a rather small amount. No zoning bylaw amendments proposed, no general bylaw amendments proposed, no significant Community Preservation Act funding requests. in essence, this is sort of the core of the warrant. Basically, it's a financial warrant, in which basically you can see that the articles are really all financial in terms of the warrant. Again, the first dozen or so articles are every year articles. Again, we got to appropriate debt, so for community preservation. And then, as we heard this evening, we got a street acceptance, and we've got a drainage easement request and a roadway easement, the only other one that I'll touch upon is the lease for the Swain Road landfill site, because this was mentioned before. And since the last meeting, I did have a chance to meet with, and Georgia was also at the meeting with the condominium association for Scotty Hollow. We presented a schematic plan of the solar farm. There were no commitments made, but at least they understand how it would be done. And, there'll be further discussion in the weeks ahead in terms of, what may be possible there. And aside from that, there's no petition articles. I mean, this is, this probably should be a 2-night meeting, but certainly won't be more than a 3-session
Don't jinx it.
town meeting, because in essence, I guess maybe perhaps I'm a bit optimistic, but if there's very little money in the budget, there's going to be very little to fight over. And so we shall see how that plays out. But the bottom line is there will not be any extraordinary items at the warrant for town meeting. With your approval this evening, the signing of the warrant, we'll have the constable post it. The election is 4 weeks from tomorrow, and town meeting is the 27th of April, and we'll be on our way.
Okay, any further questions, or?
Paul, do you plan to have one of your pre-town meeting sessions?
Yeah, we'll do the pre-town meeting. Usually it's the Wednesday before the first session on Monday night. So whatever that date is in April, it's probably the 22nd or so, I believe. And we'll do that. Oh, we've got the new custom is to do it at the North Town Hall. And we'll keep that there again this year. There's enough movement going on with voting places. I don't want to be moving around the pre-town meeting, so we'll go from there. And Honorina, speaking of that, Honorina will be in your next meeting to again give a final pitch and reminder regarding the polling locations.
So the pre-town meeting, because I'm not a town meeting rep, so I'm not
Yeah.
very familiar with
Yeah.
it. But that's an opportunity for you to present these articles, and then town meeting reps appear and ask some questions.
Right, and answer, and provide them with more insight on the articles, and then if there are items that we don't have prepared to answer, we'll gather that information and present it at the town meeting when it opens. So
Okay.
it's a voluntary meeting, which we use to just provide information so that, and people can learn what's on the warrant. Again, the ones that we seem to struggle the most with are the zoning articles, because you got the language and the amendments and so forth. This will be a pretty straightforward pre-town meeting. It'll be more explaining, well, could you fund this? Did you choose to fund that? What, and so forth. But
Well, given that there's, those kind of questions and information shared, I'd like to request that this is televised.
we can make that request to telemedia.
I'm
That way-
not a big fan of that, because then it turns into a town meeting. Then you basically have all the questions that people are, playing to the cameras and saying, oh, I want to ask this and I want to ask that. And I think you kind of have a town meeting prior to a town meeting. You get up and have a debate.
But
you know.
I think it's helpful information that's,
I
It's not
thought,
my call. I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just
telemedia
looking
is
at
what-
you to-
I thought it was an
telemedia charges that.
opportunity so Paul would not be blindsided by questions at town meeting, so he gets an idea of what questions might come up that maybe he hasn't thought of to add to his presentation for actual town meeting. That's how I looked at it.
I just think it's more information. I think it'd be very helpful for everybody to see that exchange. And someone may ask a question as a town meeting rep, and then they don't ask it on town meeting floor because they already got the answer. I mean, wasn't that part of the whole discussion around having town meetings, so that you can get so that they can get some of their questions out of the way, so that town meeting's more streamlined. I think that was just mentioned on Tom Cristiano's show recently.
But then you turn it into a town meeting. I mean, I guess that's my issue, but, you
Well,
know.
I want to hear the questions and I want to hear the answers. So whether that's a pre-town meeting and/or full town meeting, I just think that's a fair request. It's information, and I'd like to hear it as a citizen. And if I can't make it that night, it's only fair that it's televised and I can watch it when it's convenient for me. What do you think, Matt?
Well, I mean, I think those are.
I know we're not.
Yeah,
voting.
no, but I think those are legitimate points. I think there are some people who like to ask questions and will only get up and speak in a more informal setting, which is sort of what this is. But on the other hand, I also feel that some town meeting reps who might not come to the meeting might benefit and have some of their questions answered if they still watch online or watch on telemedia, if it is recorded and broadcast and they can easily access it before town meeting ahead of time, along with members in the community as well. So I think they're both very legitimate points. So I haven't made up my mind yet, but I think it's worth putting in the request to telemedia to see if they'd be interested or available while we're trying to figure out what we want to do.
Yeah, it usually is a night of a planning board meeting,
Yeah.
which they televise.
Right.
So, yeah. So,
Yeah, and we can maybe put some feelers out to some of the people who generally go. I think most of the people who go aren't shy, yeah, but I don't know.
50%.
No.
Yeah, normally you get about 40 people.
Yeah, so
Out of
that's.
the 160, you get about 40.
25%.
Yeah, you get about 25% or so.
Yeah, and I wouldn't want people to feel like it was a mandatory meeting, because it, as you say, it isn't.
I would just rather err on the side of
Okay,
more
you already said that.
transparency
You already said that.
than less transparency.
You
I
already
didn't
said
say
that.
that comment, but I'm saying it now. I
Okay.
think it's a very legitimate request.
Okay. Can we have a motion to to post the warrant?
Motion to post the warrant for Springtown meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Just have two matters for appointments this evening that I'm seeking your confirmation on. The first one has to do with the Holiday Decorating Committee. Believe it or not, we're already, nearing a quarter of the calendar year, so the Holiday Decorating Committee is actually starting to think about next December. So we would ask for your reappointment of the committee for a term ending 12/31/2015 for Tricia Duras, Eric Merrill, Vivian Merrill, Sarah Romano, Santiago Rios, Gary Samarjan, Sharon Smith, Colleen Stansfield, and Elizabeth Trombley.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then secondly, to fill the unexpired vacancy on the Historic District Commission alternate member for a term ending June 30th, 2015, I seek your confirmation to appointment of Deb Taverna of Billrica Road to serve in that capacity. She would be the representative and link to the Historical Commission, which the bylaw says is that they do have a nominee or a process of which to have a rep on the committee, which to choose from. And speaking to Linda Prescott, who's the chair, she felt that Deb would be an appropriate associate member or member of the Historic District Commission.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
We're to liaison reports and referrals. George, let's start with you this evening.
I just want to send out some get well wishes and hopefully to Frankie Fader, the mechanic for the fire department, who was in a pretty serious accident, snowmobile accident Saturday evening, I believe it was, and Friday evening, and he was med-flighted into Mass General. Well, he said he's undergone a couple of serious operations, but I guess word is that he's starting to pull through pretty well, so just want to extend best wishes to him and his family. Get well soon.
Janet?
Yeah, I just want to remind everyone that there is a Finance Committee meeting this Thursday at 7:30 p.m. As the town manager had mentioned, he's going to be presenting his budget, so I encourage everyone to either attend in person or watch from home or watch later to, this is going to be very important, as Paul had mentioned, and I encourage everyone to watch. And actually, I was going to pull something up on my phone. If you could jump to Matt real quick and then come back to me when you're done. I
Okay.
had something else.
Matt, what do
Um,
you have?
I was going to say the 7 North Road Committee was finally able to meet. They finally had a quorum. And it was good, healthy discussion. They're looking at everything. They're looking at the zoning. They want to make sure that they have a really good understanding of what the property can be used for as far as what are other municipal uses. If there was going to be a change of use, how would they go through that process? So they're trying to get a really good handle on what the property can be used for before they start their public information session. So they might be able to have some ideas about what would be the easiest new uses, just to help people brainstorm. But then they're also going to be looking at all sorts of ways for like surveys and any avenue they can for getting public input from the community and holding, a couple different public input sessions, maybe doing one on the site once the building is down, so people can sort of visually get an idea of what's there. Just to help people who might have an idea for something really grandiose. When you get on the property, you have a really good idea of just how small or how big it is, depending on what your preference for the property is. So I think they're off to a good start, and hope to have some more updates soon.
When is the building coming down?
Oh, that's good.
Do we have an actual date? I've been asked that, and
Yeah.
I didn't know if the snow and everything has anything to do with it, or what's going on there.
No, it's, where are we? It will be down within the next month. Let me explain what has to happen. They have to complete the removal of the hazardous materials. Unfortunately, they found some additional materials that weren't found in the initial survey, of which we were a little disappointed with the firm that did the initial survey, but that will be done. That's why you have a contingency. Once that's completed, they then submit certification to the state. You then have a 10 business day period before the demolition commences. That will probably put us to the last week of March. So we anticipate, as I said, within a month that the demolition will take place. It will take, it will take a little bit of time in terms of the demolition itself, because, well, by then most of the snow we expect will have melted, but it's more what they have to do is they sort the materials,
Okay.
the recyclable materials go here and so forth. So I would anticipate that as we're into early April, that will be completed, and then similarly, the asbestos team that completed this, and remember I talked about the 10-day period, when they complete the work over at the North Road Fire Station, they will then go over to the Dutton House, perform the work over there, and then again, once that's done, there's a 10-day period. So basically, at this point, the North Road Fire Station is ahead of the Dutton House. Clearly, by the end of April, everything will be cleared. And again, the first one would be the fire station, which would probably be beginning at the end of this month, and then again, Dutton House probably by the mid to end of April. So that's where it's going.
Before I forget, about the recyclable materials, one of the ideas that the committee had brainstormed, and I think it's important to maybe bring this up sooner rather than later, is using some of those bricks, and not just a few, but they were thinking if there was going to be any walkways on the site, or maybe a sidewalk in front of the site, or just on the site at all, it might be neat to use some of those bricks in a small way to sort of preserve some of the history of the building. If there's going to be a walkway on the site or something. So I don't know if we can speak to the contractor about that, or if it's already written in the contract in some way, but if we can maybe arrange that before the building comes down and everything gets shipped away, maybe we can at least keep those to the side until we figure out how we may be able to fund that, or get volunteers to do it or something.
Store them in your garage?
That's fine. I got a little locker.
Sure, a lot of people would like
that's
some of
the-
those
part of the bid.
It's part of the bid, but I will check. I'll look into it.
Yeah,
To
that's-
salvage somebody else.
Yeah, we're having weekly meetings. We're having weekly meetings with the demolition contractor, and so I'll hopefully I'll know something as soon as
Yeah, if we
you
could
know,
get some of them
next
at
few
least.
days.
Yeah. Oh yeah, and then
Still
just
in
my
your-
office hours, 5 to 6 p.m. at the Panera. I almost said the Java Room. Panera in Drum Hill now on Thursdays. One of my recent members is in the audience. Thank you for coming, entertaining me. But yeah, feel free to stop by and discuss any issue in town.
You have a band or anything? You have entertainment at that?
No, I don't. I can play music on my laptop.
Oh, boy.
just one more small
Sure.
thing if you want to end with you. On behalf of the Chelmsford Republican Town Committee, I did want to mention that their debate will be Thursday, March 19th, from 7 to 9 p.m. at the Chelmsford Police Station. Doors open at 6:30 p.m. I want to make sure that people know that everyone's invited. It will be broadcast live by Chelmsford Telemedia. Will be the candidates for school committee and board of selectmen, and we hope to have a good turnout.
Who's the moderator?
It is Brian Latina again.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, and my son Trace is going to be the timekeeper.
Oh, very good. Very
Yeah. So that was it.
Okay, thanks. So a couple things. First of all, I want to congratulate the newest sergeant in the Chelmsford Police Force, Sergeant Jason Poore, who was sworn in last week. Congratulations to him for getting his stripes. We want to also welcome Nobo, the newest upscale restaurant in town over at the old Stop and Shop Plaza, where also the new Dunkin' Donuts is going to be going in shortly. There'll probably be a race to see which one opens soonest. But there was a great ribbon cutting and kind of soft opening last week, and they will be opening permanently probably by the end of this week.
Oh, okay, good.
We hope people will go out and patronize them, and kind of in line with some of the other budget things that we've heard about this evening. This winter has been so brutal for so many restaurants. People have, it's been shown that people haven't been going out to eat as much as they have been. So I encourage everybody to do that. We do receive some revenue from the local, the local option meals tax. So anything we can do to increase that would definitely be beneficial to the town, and I'm sure the owners of the restaurants would also appreciate that. On the kind of in line with the Dutton House, as you mentioned, the library will be having an unusually timed book sale next month on April 11th and 12th at the town office's gym. I'm assuming to try to get rid of some of the books that they've accumulated in the Dutton House so that it is ready for demolition. And will they have a place to store books?
Yeah,
going
the
forward?
books have already been moved out of the Dutton
Oh, they
House.
have,
They're
okay.
already in the gym.
Okay.
And if, I don't know if you've been in the gym, but we provide them with a secured
Yeah.
location, and that will continue to be available to them.
Okay.
So, yeah, so they, because I know there's been a little bit of concern about the stopping their collections, but
Right.
hopefully that can resume.
Okay, so then the idea would be then they'd collect them directly here, or would collect them?
Well, they could collect them over there and then bring them over. 'Cause
Okay.
I think people are accustomed to where they drop them off.
All right, okay. And just one other thing, I wanted to mention, I know we've heard a lot of talk from officials in Lowell over the past couple of weeks about the opiate issue that's been affecting so many communities, and my understanding is that the city manager is planning some kind of summit. I know he was intending, well, it seemed like he was intending to keep it more just Lowell, but I wonder, it would seem to me it would be beneficial to include surrounding communities too, because that's an issue that doesn't stop at the town line or the city line. And I didn't know if maybe you could reach out to the city manager and see if, there would be some benefit, or if there would be some willingness for them to include maybe somebody from the Board of Health from here, or police and fire, first responders. I know it's become, extremely difficult for the city of Lowell. I know just a couple of weeks ago they had 2 people in one day that died from an overdose. But even in Chelmsford, everybody has been touched by it to some extent. So it's an issue that's not going to go away, I don't think. So, and I think that's all that I have. Any press questions?
Hi, Yolanda Melanson, Lowell Sun. As you're aware, there's been a great deal of discussion recently in the community about all the recent happenings in the school department and about the superintendent himself, and whether or not he is fit to continue to lead the school department in this town. I just wanted to ask all of the members of the Board of Selectmen, if you would be willing to offer your thoughts on Mr. Tiano, and what you hope that the school committee would do in relation to him.
I would prefer that we, as a board, and in this venue, not answer that question. I'm not going to stop anybody from answering it, but I would prefer not to. I think the school committee is moving forward with with appropriate action, and I'm prepared to see what that action entails over the next several weeks and months. I don't know if anybody else wanted to say anything else.
I feel the same way. I mean, I think they're on top of making some type of decision. They had an executive session this evening, I believe, and, you know, I think they're gonna come to some decision soon. They've put a lot of time and effort into it. They know a lot more facts than we do, and it's their purview, so I would rather not make a decision myself, a suggestion.
Anybody else like to offer any thoughts?
Well said, George.
Nope. I respect that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, our next regular meeting is scheduled for March 23rd, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Somebody bought